Innovation Unplugged from the Alabama Community College System's Innovation Center takes you inside Alabama's workforce development. Join us for enlightening conversations with community leaders and industry experts showcasing experiences, addressing key issues, and celebrating successes in the workforce initiatives across the state.
Friends, family, listeners, welcome back to another episode of Innovation Unplugged. And you guys are probably used to, at this point, to different backgrounds, different views. And so I'm really pleased to announce and thankful that we're actually in the studio in Decatur at the Innovation Center. This is the first podcast of ours to be recorded here. So we're excited. It may not look the same and it may not be beautiful, but we will, we're going to have a good show. I got two shows back to back we're going to record today. The first one was with Dan Durbin from Durbin Leadership. And I couldn't be happier about this. But I'm Houston Blackwood, Workforce Director for this bunch, and we're going to dive in right now. So Dan Durbin, how are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having us, Houston. And I'm glad we're here because I got to get a tour of the facilities, and you guys have an amazing space here. Yeah,
you're going to like using that space. We've never had people come in and say they wish they'd been somewhere else because it's relaxing or it's conducive to that high-level conversation, and it's always private. So before we dive into any content, where did Durbin Leadership come from?
It's actually a really great story. I'll start by saying that I had the honor of spending 11 years in the Army. And just to be completely honest, I didn't go in the Army primarily for patriotism in the beginning. I went in there because I needed a college education. Mm-hmm. And the Army is the greatest training organization in the world. They do an incredible job of taking raw talent, aptitude, and forging that aptitude into true leader competence. And I didn't know that's what God was doing in me. I thought I was just going to join the Army and serve my time so that I get a college education. And so from the Army, I then went into big business. I went into sales. I worked for large pharmaceutical companies. I worked for equipment companies. And these were national and international organizations. And the thing about big business is they get very good at understanding what skills people at different levels of the organization need. They outline those skills, and then they have large training departments. And those departments, their responsibility is, hey, we've hired this A player. Now we want you to equip the A player to do the job. And so the question was, where did Durbin Leadership come from? Well, it came from, I had a natural bent towards leadership. I'm not going to say from birth, but, I felt like a leader a lot of my life, a person of influence. And people ask the question, are leaders born or leaders made?
Good question.
Okay. The answer is yes. I've never met a leader that wasn't born. But even those with natural leadership ability, their ability is maximized based on the experiences, the influences, the opportunities that they have, and who really invests in them. And I was just super blessed to not only have people of faith to pour into me, but have people that their job was to perform a wartime mission, or their job was to deliver for the shareholder. And I got, as a participant, to participate in that training. So as I got later in my career, I also began to observe that small businesses and nonprofits, they don't have the benefit that these super large organizations have of having people dedicated to training. And so to answer your question, Durbin Leadership was birthed out of my desire to make a contribution to people who suffer from incompetent leaders. That can sound harsh to all you that are listening out there, like, dang, Dan, that's a bit much. But I want you to think about for a second every environment you've been in. I want you to think about the time that you were promoted before you were ready. You thought you were ready, but when you got in that first leadership position, you went, oh, this is harder than I thought it was.
Yeah.
Or the time that you had somebody promoted and you were reporting to them, and they were promoted ahead of their time, and they had a heart for leadership, but they didn't have the skill. And if you think about it, everybody suffers. People that are counting on that leader to lead that department in a school system, people that are counting on that leader in a plumbing business to lead the plumbers. That boss thought, man, finally I'm at the point where I can appoint him as the leader or her as the leader. but they don't have the skill. And so that boss now has to come back down off of the place where they were elevating to help them. And then the people that those plumbers are reporting to, or that those teachers are reporting to, they suffer too, because they're leaders out of their depth. And so as I saw that, I saw the problem, Houston, and then I saw, man, what if all of these people had the gift of being trained to leadership competence? How much suffering could we alleviate for everybody? Because that leader suffers too.
For sure. If you're that individual, there are people above you, below you, and all around you. If you are not doing it well, that will suffer. And so, very much so, the person in charge. Because when it's chaos under you, chaos in your own heart. So I would say that what I know about your particular program is not just a one-off leadership training. It really becomes a relationship. And the most proper word is coaching, right? Why is coaching different, leadership coaching different than just leadership training?
All right. So great question. And I would say that we do both. Okay. There's the classroom environment where we're going to teach delegation, empowerment, conflict management, or strategic planning, or quarterly business planning. There's the classroom environment where we're teaching those skills, and it's not a lecture. You're not coming into an environment where listen to this, oh, great one, teach me, show me your ways, right?
Right.
It's a facilitated conversation that is in context to that organization's leadership challenges. And we've worked with that team ahead of time to identify, like, where is leadership incompetence harming you? And let's train the gap. And we facilitate in a way that we're not the only ones bringing information. You may have on any given team someone that's been there for 25 years and someone that's been there for 2 years. And we want to get them discussing it so that they can appreciate one another as a source of leadership wisdom. But anytime we do that, Houston, we also see that the classroom is going to give you exposure, but maybe it's not going to give you understanding. And that's where we pair coaching, leadership coaching, along with the leadership training. And the coach comes along where exposure's not enough. And we really need to understand, why is this person struggling to grasp this concept? Or they understand the concept, but I can understand delegation all I want. But if I have a fear of failure, and I'm going to put the responsibility of the outcome in the hands of somebody else, then now I'm dealing with a psychological problem. I'm not dealing with a know-how problem. And I think in order for leaders, and even in your time in as a principal, as a coach, you saw there were times that it's not that the person didn't know the skill, it's that they weren't willing to implement it. And that's where coaching comes in.
Yeah, that happened twice. The second time was a group of teachers had been together forever, and they were phenomenal humans, phenomenal people, and knew their content well, but they'd been together so long, and the leadership had changed, and I was number 3 out of 4 years, right, that they didn't buy in. And we had a plan, and we talked about the plan, but we didn't coach the plan, and it didn't work for the first year. Until we finally got into some one-on-one and really figuring out who, and it wasn't me that figured it out, because I was the dumbest kid in the room that time, but it took that long-range coaching. We did all the cliche leadership stuff.
Right.
But it took that long-range coaching with someone from the outside.
Right.
To make all that happen.
So let's talk about that situation for an example. They had leadership turnover. And so they're like, okay, Houston, Mr. Blackwood, he's the flavor of the month.
Exactly.
Right? We got this. We don't need your insight. And you probably positionally assumed, okay, I've got their buy-in. And that was a poor assumption.
Extremely.
And then a third party recognized, hey, Houston, I think I know what's going on over here. And so that's the true benefit of coaching, is when I'm in the whirlwind of executing a plan and I've made all these assumptions, but I'm I don't have the outside perspective, and wisdom is maybe a better word, of what's going on. And a lot of times the reason why coaching, in addition to the training, helps is because you have that third party come in and they're outside of the food chain. It's not my boss.
Right.
It's just a trusted advisor that is saying, hey, can I help you with this? So great example.
Well, that's exactly what happened is, with a school, and it was a K-8 school, and probably my favorite job ever. But there were safety things.
Other than the one that he's in right now.
Well, now I disagree. And I'll say that out loud. I've said it before. There, every single day, there was a win. There was a little boy, a little girl that a teacher, somebody, you could see the visible win. Sometimes here, that win might be in Dothan or Mobile, and we don't experience it the same. But there were so many safety structural system things that when it came down to the data and having somebody to get there. That's what that coach did, and we'll talk about that in a minute. A lot of times the leaders know there's a problem. They can see that something's not clicking with my team or my process. What are the biggest problems that relate to that leadership today? What are you really doing to solve those problems for people?
Well, we feel very blessed because if you think about the marketplace today, people are frustrated that employees are not engaged. But when I talk to owners and directors, what they tend to be most frustrated with is, my leaders don't know how to solve the problem. And it's easiest to solve a problem that somebody else recognizes, right? Like we're not out here providing a service that people don't feel hungry for, right? And so it really, what do we do? How deep is the ocean? We do a lot of things, but we can't teach leadership outside of the context of the organization and the structure, right? So I could teach all of these skills, 9 categories, 37 skills. I could teach those, but if the organization doesn't afford that leader capacity to actually lead, then it doesn't matter what I teach them. So what do I mean by capacity? I'm going to get biblical for a second and y'all just go with me. There's a story in Genesis in Exodus where Moses leads the people of Israel across the Red Sea. A lot of our listeners are going to be familiar with the story. And he's got 1 million+ people and he's one man. And after he's crossed the Red Sea, they're out in the wilderness. He is presiding over all 12 tribes, ruling over all the people. And along comes his father-in-law, Jethro. And this is in Exodus chapter 18. And Jethro says, what are you doing? Like, again, he's kind of a leadership coach here. He's an outside person. He's not a part of the Israelites. He's just a third-party observer that comes and sees what Moses is doing. And he says, you're wearing yourself out trying to do this all yourself. Why don't you divide the work up among, choose someone wise and capable from each tribe, the best of the best, and give them responsibility over that tribe. And then subdivide that into groups of 100 and groups of 50. And Moses, you only handle the most difficult to solve problems and let them solve all the other ones. So that's one of the biggest problems we're solving right now is helping organizations understand how much capacity can one leader have. And that's not just like the number ratio, like 1 leader to 12 followers. That's not the only thing. It's what all am I expecting from that leader in terms of individual contribution? What things are they doing? And also these leader tasks. And founders are notorious for miscalculating capacity. Founders tend to be very high capacity people. Like business owners and executives tend to be very high capacity, and they believe that everybody down the line should have as much capacity as them.
Is that a fatal error?
Fatal error. And it really takes some salesmanship on my part. I usually have to show them and then build an organizational chart with them. And then they always want to put 10 pounds of sugar in a 5-pound bag. And I'm like, look, man, like you're frustrated now. You're going to continue to be frustrated because your expectations of what one human being can do, especially when they're new, underskilled, or their subordinate leaders are not yet skilled in what they're doing. You know, capacity gets easier the higher level of competence that your subordinate leaders have.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's one of the things that we're really doing a lot of work with, is helping people understand capacity. Then the next piece that I would say big problem is leadership understanding. Like, is there a consistent expectation of what a leader should actually achieve, and not just what they should achieve, but what are their methods? What is leadership?
Mm-hmm.
And so the second thing I would say is leadership understanding. Do we have a common definition of what leadership is?
Do you think for the teachers, like in this team here, we've got an executive director, chief of operations, and then 2 directors, some managers, and then some coordinators, right? And they all do different jobs.
Mm-hmm.
I think we're supposed to be able to do everything they can do.
Mm-hmm.
It may be vertical, I think so, or the other way, but I don't know that we all fully understand exactly what they have to do every single day. We could do it, but I don't know that we actually know it, what they're actually doing. I think we know what we think they're doing, but sometimes I wonder if we always know what they actually do. Same thing in the K-12 world. Same thing with a printing company, I'm sure.
So I love it. That leads me to this. We do organizational consulting and leadership training. Okay. Anytime we do organizational consulting, it includes training. Every time we do training, it doesn't include consulting. Mm-hmm. But what you just described is there's what I do, mm-hmm. and there's what you think I do, and there's what I think you think I should do, right?
Yeah.
And usually all 3 of those are different.
Yeah.
And so what we've developed is this document. It's called a role mandate. And in this role mandate, the top, I wish I had one to show y'all, but the top block is just, what is the purpose of the role? And the first time I issue this to a client, what they want to do is write a paragraph of what the outcome should be.
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, I don't want a paragraph. I want 3 bullet points, incomplete sentences that state the outcome that you want from that role. So there's no way for me to escape what the expectation is.
Right.
What's the outcome?
Mm-hmm.
And then next we'll list, okay, how am I going to hold you accountable to that outcome? So one of my favorite examples is, let's just say a youth pastor. What's your expectation of a youth pastor? We could use football coach, we could use high school principal, right? But the 3 things that I would expect if I were a lead pastor of a youth pastor, or if I was a parent, I want you to gather a crowd.
Mm-hmm.
I want you to help those students love Jesus more, and I want them to have fun so they'll continue to come back. Like, if you do those 3 things, it's a win. You're getting an A on the report card.
Right.
Okay. All right. Well, then how do I hold you accountable to that? I'm getting to the understanding of what leadership is. Well, how am I going to hold you accountable to that? Well, I'm going to make a list of, I think in our size church and community, the crowd you gather should be about this big as a percentage of our church, mm-hmm. right? When we talk about discipleship and making these people love Jesus more, this is what that might look like. Here's some metrics that we can measure, mm-hmm. right? So there's these bullet points, and then there's a deeper understanding of how am I going to measure your success at doing that thing. So here's the leadership, like money moment on that is, if I'm going to hold you accountable to discipleship, gathering a crowd, and people having fun, then what skills would be required of any human being, not just that one, any human being, what skills should be required in order to reach those results? Well, now we have a common understanding, mm-hmm. because what's going to show up on those skills are things like, you should be able to facilitate a leadership meeting of your volunteers. Well, what does that have to do with these 3 things?
All of it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you're going to have 50 kids or 500 kids, you're going to need volunteers. Mm-hmm. So one of the skills there is also going to be recruit a team. Well, what does that have to do with discipleship? So we started this little piece of this conversation with, there's what my boss thinks I should do, there's what I do, and there's what I think my boss wants me to do. And usually there's confusion. So the base question was, what are the biggest problems as it relates to leadership in the marketplace today? Well, The answer is understanding. Many bosses are holding their subordinate leaders accountable for something that they have not really outlined to themselves. They've not been the architect of what that role should look like. And if you've not been an architect of what the role should look like, then you can't possibly train your subordinate leader nor hold them accountable. You can't develop them. And so if leaders had a better understanding of what am I actually expecting of you, then the subordinate leader would have a much greater chance at being successful and even knowing, like, am I the right man or woman for this job? Do the nuts and bolts of fulfilling that role, and you can say youth pastor, you can say the local manager at Dollar General. It's just an example that applies across the board.
Sure. Do you see most companies, most of your clients don't have that full metric built out for each level? Are they missing that metric at each level?
There is no doubt. I mean, okay, very mature organizations, right, have it figured out. Why? Or have a chance of having it figured out. Why? Well, because they have a middle layer of leadership that is highly skilled and experienced, and they're able to actually be specialists in that. And Houston, that's the gap. Like, that's kind of the divine setup that's happened for me is I have worked for all these very large organizations, U.S. Army, GlaxoSmithKline, Dank Office Imaging, and I saw that come, and I was just a cog in the wheel, but I was an active participant. And then I thought about my two dads who were small business owners and the other small organizations that I worked for, and I wanted to bring all these systems and understanding to this environment. And I thought they should already know it, but as I zoomed out, I went, there's no way they could understand that. And so Durbin Leadership exists to build better leaders by giving organizations an understanding of leadership. We help them set those systems up, and then we identify, like, what's the piece of this that's going to give you the most traction, which not only leads to profitability, it leads to people development, it leads to people staying there longer, it leads to peace. Because you've created order out of chaos.
That makes sense. And I think in organizing that, you've got to have some type of levels. You know, you've got to know where you are in the chain of command, I guess, to understand really what your impact could be.
Correct.
Do you often map that out for people, or do you see a common theme across businesses?
So as I answer that question, you know, there's a lot of different leaders, Jim Collins, John Maxwell, and I would encourage you, if you're listening to this, you need to read everything Jim Collins, everything John Maxwell, everything Patrick Lencioni. There's nothing new under the sun. Like, these thought leaders that have gone before us have done a phenomenal job of giving leadership understanding, and I ask you to go devour those resources.
Sure.
But those first two authors, Collins and Maxwell, they have different levels of leadership. I've seen it differently. I see that there's 4 different levels of leaders. The first level is doer. And the doer, you'd say, well, they're not a leader. They got to lead themselves. The doer is the person that paints the house, prepares the tax return. They're the doer of the deed, records the podcast, right? And I would see that person, they have visibility of like 0 to 5,000 feet. But then the next level of leader is the manager. And in your context, as you're listening to this, the manager may be a supervisor, but a manager sees more from 5 to 15,000 feet. And a manager, in my definition, typically they oversee a process that somebody else put into place. And they're awesome at that. They have proven themselves faithful. And I think that those who are faithful in little things will be made master over much. And we should reward their hunger, their drive, their faithfulness. But in that first level of leadership, oftentimes a senior leader, founder, owner expects that manager to be able to understand when the system the owner put in place breaks down. And that first layer of leadership beyond doer to manager, that's where I can run the system and I can run it well, but don't expect me to design the system or fix it when it breaks. So at doer, manager, and then that next level is leader. And I'm not saying, don't get tripped up, that managers don't lead. They do. But the difference between a manager and a leader is the depth of understanding of they know why that system exists. And therefore, when the system breaks down and fails, they're able to say, I'm looking at the outcome here, and I think our system is broken and we need to look at it again. You've got a higher does that make sense?
Makes perfect sense. Mm-hmm.
And I think that when we go in to teach leadership, it's important. And one of our favorite questions to ask is, what is leadership? And when you get a whole group of people to begin answering that question, in a group of 30 people, you're essentially going to have 5 to 7 themes. You're going to have people that say, oh, well, leadership is charisma and it's caring for people.
Mm-hmm.
And some people are going to say leadership is accountability. And some people are going to say leadership is vision and understanding where we are and where we're going, and it's strategic planning. And all of those answers are correct. But what's required at doer, manager, leader, executive is different based on where in the organization you are. And I think that understanding these different levels of leadership will really help founders break free from expecting too much of people at certain levels.
Mm-hmm.
So doer, manager, leader, well, then the next level is executive. And by the time you get to the executive level, there should be very little doing going on from an executive level leader. An executive level leader should be thinking,
Mm-hmm.
listening, planning, strategizing, communicating vision, mentoring even.
Mm-hmm.
But too often, we have leaders and executives saddled with too much individual contribution.
Mm-hmm.
And so that goes back to that capacity thing.
Absolutely. I was just about to say that. If you're the founder, you started the business.
Mm-hmm.
Much like with our team, like there are 3 of us that are our chief and the 2 directors. Like we were there on day 1.
Yep.
And it's so easy to get into the student record and to fix a problem. When we have a whole team who can do that better than us, but we too often zoom into that world rather than looking at whatever's next on the horizon.
Yes.
Instead of just handing off, because I think sometimes we feel guilty to hand off. Is that common?
It's not just guilt, it's reflex.
Okay.
It's, oh, that's an easy task. And let's be honest, as like you were one of the first 3, and in the beginning you didn't have this facility, you didn't have this staff. And so it wasn't a luxury to have somebody else do it.
No.
So you get in this habit of doing it. And my team did it to me the other day. Last week I was in a meeting and I said, okay, as soon as this meeting's over, I'll do that. And 2 of them, Houston, looked at me and said, why would you do that? And I was like, I teach this, and I just fell in the same.
Yeah.
Of course, our team is real small and nimble and growing right now. So, I'm still in that. I'm accustomed to having to execute everything. And so I would say that doer, manager, leader, executive, as you're building your organizational chart, as you're thinking about what you would expect. And I think like a founder, I think how much productivity and fruit can I get out of this individual player, because that team member is so expensive and so valuable, right? So I understand wanting to put as much on there, but if you violate, no one would ever expect the quarterback to also be on the offensive line.
Sure.
It's the same thing.
That's clear. Yeah. How do you, if you were one of those founders and you're not privy to having Durbin leadership to come in and tell you how to fix that, how do you fix it on your own? So they're out there in the world and they're someone's listening, and they realize that that's where they are.
Mm-hmm.
They started a great thing. They've got a team, but they just keep getting in the weeds. How do you coach yourself out of that?
I think you have to slow down enough. I think you have to slow down enough to really see the problem. And to be honest with you, I don't think that most people can solve it on their own. And I'm not just saying hire Durbin leadership. Of course, of course, do that. At the very least, you have to bring somebody into the organization who has been ahead of where you currently are and has already solved that problem.
Right.
Because you're too close to the problem to solve it. Now, look, somebody else can't solve it for you. They have to solve it with you. And I think that if you're in a situation where you don't have the luxury of hiring a Durbin leadership, then you need to back up and you need to say, let me first understand what is my personal philosophy of leadership. Like what is my philosophy of leadership, and was my philosophy of leadership right as my team was growing from 0 to 10 people? And now my philosophy of leadership needs to change, and my structure has to support the strategy. And so mission is why I exist. Vision is where are we going as an organization? Do I have a very clear picture of vision? So mission comes first, then vision, where do I want to go? Then strategy. Strategy is how am I going to reach my vision, my 6-month, 1 year, 3-year goals? How am I going to get to the where I'm going and the what I want? So mission, vision, strategy, then comes structure. So why do I say that? Because too many people build their organizational chart and the structure absent of thinking about what are my current problems, where am I going, how am I going to get there? The form, the structure is what empowers this strategy to get me to my destination. And so to answer your question very clearly, you can't hire me or us. You have to understand why you exist, where you want to go, how you're going to get there. And once you know why, where, and how, now you can build the organizational chart to say, who is it that has to exist inside of my organization to affect that how? And so it really gets down to, you have to understand organizational leadership if you're going to solve the problem.
Love that. I think I know a lot of our listeners are small business, or they are those middle managers.
Correct.
You know, because we that's who we deal with a lot of times for when our colleges do the training. So I'm thinking, 4 or 5 construction companies right now that are huge partners to us, and they're growing and they're huge. I know they have these barriers because there are humans involved, right?
Right.
And they're moving fast and trying to meet deadlines. So I can't wait to hear the feedback from them on understanding. I've never heard it put like that: mission, vision, strategy, structure.
Correct.
Never heard that.
I hadn't either. And this is going to sound like a humble brag, but really God has just given us understanding. Like I had the great benefit of working for these giant organizations, and I learned a lot. And I've read tons and tons of leadership books. And then when I began looking at this problem, I had to find a way to articulate. And so that flow that I just described comes from 5 years of doing nothing but sitting with founders or second generation owners and helping them solve these problems. And as that problem and those leaders and all that background information helped me forge a philosophy of, this is the flow. I've gotten that flow wrong before. I've solved the org chart before we had the vision clear. And when you do that, you design the wrong solution.
Yep. That makes total sense. Foundational. We teach Alabama Training Network. They just had a name change. They teach that a lot for heavy industry in the lean, and in their own leadership management development. You've got some notes I've seen different places on your social and preparation for this. The 4 P's of leadership.
So this is something that's actionable for everybody out there. Like everybody has a philosophy of leadership. And I just want you to think about, as an example, different football coaches. Like Nick Saban has a very specific philosophy. It's about the process. He has a leadership philosophy. Well, and he's also taught several other people that philosophy. That doesn't mean that has to be your leadership philosophy. There are other philosophies that work. We could all argue maybe they don't work as well, okay? But he forged that philosophy intentionally. I heard a great interview one time by Dabo Sweeney, and he was talking about when he first became the head coach, he was the interim at Clemson before he was the head coach.
Oh, I didn't know that.
I will send you the podcast. I think it's an Ed Milet podcast with Dabo. It's several years old, but he said that in all of his years, please, y'all, if you're listening to this, like, there's some gold in what I'm about to say from this lesson. He said, I was taking notes. I had a binder and I was taking notes all along the way. And he was like, I like what this coach did. I'm going to implement that when I'm a head coach one day. He knew his destination was head coach.
Mm-hmm.
And so he was vetting other people's leadership philosophy along the way to determine how he was going to or not going to integrate his philosophy, their philosophies, into his leadership philosophy. So when the moment came that his boss got fired and they pulled him in, the AD pulled him in and said, hey, you're the guy. He said, give me 90 minutes. And he went and he grabbed that binder and he went into a broom closet and shut himself in the broom closet and he got himself ready. But he had spent his whole life building his leadership philosophy. And so all of us have integrated ideas into our leadership philosophy, either intentionally or thoughtlessly.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just encouraging everybody, take some intentionality and say, you as a leader, what matters most to you? Your leadership philosophy is going to solve the chaos for the organization you work for, and it's going to get the mission done. Well, now I want you to think about your philosophy just like when we were in grade school science. I want you to think about your philosophy like a hypothesis. I got to test that hypothesis. I think that this is the philosophy that's going to work for me. And every day or every week, you're going to have an opportunity to practice your philosophy. And you need to get feedback. Okay, so you stayed completely calm and you didn't react and you asked questions.
Mm-hmm.
How did that work? Was that effective with that person? Is it effective with most people? Or maybe the opposite. You're always calm and you decided to dial up the intensity in one of your conversations because you're test driving.
Yeah.
Am I too soft?
Uh-huh.
And people are taking advantage of that and I need to reset the tone.
Let me stop you right there.
Mm-hmm.
That's an interesting thing. Only one other time in all of my workforce development did I ever see a program where people were coached over the long cycle to take notes and watch what happens. Like literally the scientific method. So anybody listening out there is, because that's got to make sense to anybody that just heard that. Because bells are going off like red flags, green flags, alarm systems are going off in my head that I'm not doing that on a consistent basis. How do I do it and document it? What's the best way or variety of ways to capture those bits of information?
Okay, so the number one thing is if you have no capacity, go back to the beginning of the show.
Mm-hmm.
If you have no capacity, you can't reflect. John Dewey, speaking of educational thought leaders, okay, John Dewey said, we don't learn from experience. We learn from reflecting on experience. So there's some people that have 30 years of leadership experience, but they have 30 years of the same year of experience. So we have to be able to have enough capacity so that I can not only react in the moment and reflect on it, but sometimes I go, man, I have this key player and it doesn't work. Whatever I'm doing is not working. So I'm going to think about the next time I meet with that or next time I face that challenge. What am I going to do different in order to get feedback? So the first thing I would say is capacity. And then the second thing I would say is you have to take time to think about it and plan a different strategy. I'm going to go back to football for a second. So we don't all have the luxury of being able to practice with our leadership team 2 hours a day before we only work 2 hours or 4 hours on a Friday night, right? But one of the beautiful things about sports is, the coach can run the play 30 times on a Tuesday and see what happens and iterate after every play. We don't have that luxury of being detached and observe and run the practice, but we actually do. The answer to your question is capacity, reflection, intentionality. Carol Beth, my wife and partner in the business, says, people change when they get tired of the way things are. And so leader, if your current leadership philosophy is not solving your leadership problem, then you have to push pause and think about what can I do differently? Do that different thing and then observe if you get a different outcome. And sometimes that means you need a coach, whether it's a formal coach from an organization like Durbin Leadership that helps you process that
Right.
and gives you homework. You know, I know you're going to do an episode with Wes, and one of the things that he routinely does is he observes how someone's failing and helps them see that failure, and then gives them homework to say, all right, you keep seeing that. Your homework is to do something different and report back to me how it went.
Yeah.
So
It's powerful.
He has been so incredibly transformational for leaders, honestly, that people had written off.
Okay.
They were ready to fire him, or like, well, I wanted to promote that person, but I guess they're where they're going to be. And I think about Michael Jordan, right? Like Michael Jordan had a coach, but then he went and spent $1 million a year to hire a private coach because he wanted that much input on his performance. What makes the best players the best players? They think about this stuff, and they know that they're not going to reach their ultimate potential without the help of an expert. And so I would just say to all the business owners out there, like, my hat's off to you. I am one. I know how hard it is to run business.
Yeah.
I also know that I can't be everything to everybody. And sometimes I need somebody else to observe my people and give me insight because I don't have it all. I think it's how it's designed, so we'll all be humble.
Yeah, knock you on your can just a little bit.
So I'm going to finish up these 4 P's. I mean, you have anything?
No, that's it.
Okay. So you have to identify what your philosophy of leadership is. Then you have to practice that philosophy. You're proving your hypothesis. Once you are convinced this philosophy works for me, I can systematize this method of leadership. This is how I do this. And that's not just characteristics. It's also, this is my meeting rhythm. These are my systems of accountability. It's beyond just the idea of leadership. It's the actual practice of it. Once I believe my philosophy is right, I prove my philosophy, then I go and I make it a process. I formalize, this is how at ACCS, this is how at Durbin Leadership, this is how at Smith Construction Company we do leadership. Then everybody's running my philosophy, and we all receive the promise of leadership, which is peace, it's profitability, it's capacity, it's people development, it's happy customers. If I will formalize my leadership philosophy, and then put it in a process, we all receive the promise of an effective leadership philosophy.
I think at the end of that, the last phrase may have been off the cuff, but a happy customer.
Yes.
You know, that customer might have money they're giving you on a routine basis because you're making them better, where it might be somebody that you've never seen before. They're just an email.
Correct.
And it's just an email that you handled and moved them along.
Correct.
But at the end of the day, no matter what their level is in their group, if they're a doer, manager, leader, or executive, you made them happy. You made them better because your processes were all aligned. You know, there's a national leadership guru. They talk about alignment all the time. Jocko
Willink. Echelon Front.
Echelon Front. Yeah, I couldn't think of it. And I think I hear alignment 20 times in every one of their shows, if they're really talking about leadership. And but at the end of the day, that alignment that you just talked about, from philosophy to that promise, creates happy customer.
And sometimes, y'all, that happy customer is your internal customer, is your team.
So you can't forget that.
Look, I mean, we work with our teams all day, every day. And when I don't have my act together and I don't have a vision and a system for us to align behind, I'm creating the chaos and the conflict by my passive approach of not saying, this is how we're going to do this.
Yeah. Love that. I think my team would probably say that they don't get that promise very often because we are in a lot of chaos. So we're getting along. We're going to get to our final thoughts here. Dan, it's been I met you a long time ago at Calhoun, and I can't remember. I worked at Calhoun. I don't know why we were there. I think it was outside my building. I have no idea. But I met you. There's a moment we shook hands. I was like, there's something about that guy. Just hearing him talk, I need to follow up. Got busy years later. Still don't know how we reconnected here, but as we've going around watching your things, I've just been impressed with the depth of what you do and how you do it, and the personal, and some of the feedback your folks of your customers, your happy customers have posted. What would be the takeaway from anybody out there in the world that's listened to this is like, I've been struggling. I can't quite figure out what's going on, but I need help. Like, what would you tell them, and how would they find you?
I would say, first of all, thank you. Like, it's been really good connecting with you, and what you're building here and have built here, you and your team, is phenomenal. I feel like I have a teammate,
Yeah,
absolutely, in helping people be equipped. And answer your question, I would say that you cannot change what you do not acknowledge. And that you acknowledging that our number one customer, Houston, is the person that understands my organizational problems outgrew my ability to lead through them.
Yeah.
And you can't teach someone who's not humble. You can't teach someone who think they already know. And so I would say you can't change what you don't acknowledge. And then acknowledging that is the first step, but then asking for help is the second. And we invite those conversations. So durbinleadership.com, dan@durbinleadership.com. Send me an email. There's contact forms on the website. Acknowledge what that problem is and really think through, what is the challenge that I'm facing, so that when you come talk to us, we know how to begin to design a solution. And we are not a cookie cutter organization. We do have systems and processes and material, but what separates us from anybody else that's teaching leadership today right now is our solutions are custom built for the problems that our customers have. We want to help someone in their context.
I love that. That's our goal too, with our colleges and businesses. And I think that's been super productive and helpful for us and from our state agencies and whatnot. So I love that. Personal and intentional.
Yes.
Good stuff. Final thoughts? Anything else?
I'll just say this, that the journey of leadership is humbling. Any leader that continues to try to grow, we're going to reach the end of ourselves. And that's true. If you're the middle manager listening, okay, well, welcome to leadership. Like, if you're at the end of you, welcome.
Yeah.
Like, that's where growth begins.
Yeah.
If I'm not at the end of my leadership capacity yet, then I'm just living on old lessons learned and I'm not pressing forward. So when you reach that threshold where, hey, my skills don't support my mission right now, there's a tendency to become self-deprecating. And I would just, instead of being self-deprecating, y'all accept it as an invitation to your next level. I need to level up and I need to go to the next level. Our motto is building better leaders. We want to be a part of your journey. One of the greatest compliments that I've had are with two customers that we've had in the last couple of years. One was an accounting organization and one was a professional engineering organization. And in one of the principals in that organization, she said, I thought I had reached my final destination, and you helped me see that there was another level for me that I never saw myself being at. And I feel like I'm excited to come to work again.
Oh boy. That's good stuff.
Yeah, I mean, like, I want a paycheck, but that's better than a paycheck.
Right.
Right. And in this other professional services organization, we helped that team. So we do training, but we also do organizational consulting for small businesses to help them scale. And we helped them see that they had some leaders that were stuck because they were stuck in that manager-doer level, and there was no place in the organization for them to elevate to the leader level. And they actually started 2 new divisions and elevated those managers into those positions. That when the organization grows, it allows your people more space to grow internally. And so if you're out there and you have leaders that are stuck and frustrated, and here's what happens when a manager gets stagnant, is they begin to coast because all their skill level, they've developed all the skill they need for where they are.
Right.
That's the definition of stagnation. I'm going to stop growing because this position doesn't require any more of me. We want to help your organization grow and give the gift to everybody of expansion, not just the business, the people within the business.
Yeah, because the business will be better if people are growing. Love that. Man, I take a lot of notes sometimes. I don't know if I've ever taken that many notes. My hand hurts. You know,
Well, I appreciate that. I
feel
can't
like-
wait to hear what you have to say.
I feel like I should probably pay for this service, pay you for this podcast. But this has been phenomenal, Dan. Durbin Leadership, I've been impressed. So thanks for coming on. I look forward to hearing from Wes more about the coaching side. We touched on it briefly, so it's been good. So those of you out there listening, if you feel stuck, now you know how to get unstuck for sure. So thanks for being on. This is another episode of Innovation Unplugged. Remember to like, subscribe, and share on all your podcast platforms.